Alright, welcome to Quadrilaterals Level 3. Now, in this very first example, it says given quadrilateral ABCD is a parallelogram and angle ABC equals 38 degrees, find the measure of the other three angles. Now, the first thing I want to do is just this. If we know it's a parallelogram, I'm going to put one little arrow there, one arrow there, and I'm going to put two arrows there and two arrows there. And remember, this just helps me understand that for a parallelogram, it has two sets of parallel sides. We can also put one mark there, and two marks there, and two marks there, because we know that for a parallelogram, the opposite sides are also congruent. Now, angle ABC, I see that ABC, so this angle is right here, is going to be 38 degrees. And if you think back to your level 1 video, you should also know that not only are the opposite sides of a parallelogram congruent, so are the opposite angles. So if this angle is 38 degrees, its opposite angle must also be 38 degrees. And so with that knowledge right there, we've already found angle ADC, which is of course 38 degrees. Now, what about finding the angles that are consecutive or next to the given angle? So this would say, like, okay, how can we find angle BAD, this top one right here? Well, remember, for a parallelogram, consecutive angles are supplementary, or they add up to 180. So if I know that this angle is 38, I can simply do 180 minus 38. Oh, there we go. And let's see. Take away from the 8, that gives us 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. And 7 minus 3 is 4. And don't forget to carry down this 1. And it turns out that angle BAD right here is 142 degrees. Now, if we know angle BAD, well, we definitely know angle BCD, because remember, our opposite angles for a parallelogram are congruent. So it must be 142 as well. Pause this video, finish taking any notes that you need to, and we're going to move on to example number 2. Okay, here we are in example 2, and it says given quadrilateral ABCD is a trapezoid where AD is parallel to BC. So we're saying, okay, AD is parallel to BC, and remember our definition of a trapezoid is that it only has one set of parallel lines. Now we want to find angle ABC, so this right here, when given angle BAD is 140. So I'll just go ahead and write that right there, 140. Oh man, what's going on with my marker? So we have 140. Now, from there, we want to ask ourselves, how can we go to consecutive non-base angles? And in fact, I'd even like for you to write that down on your paper. Consecutive non-base angles. Okay, so we see here, what is a base angle? Well, when we have this line that is essentially parallel to this line, these two things represent our parallel lines, or they represent our bases. So this angle right here and this angle right here, those are base angles. This angle right here and this angle right here, those are base angles as well. So when we say consecutive non-base angles, we're essentially saying, hey, what about this angle that's right next to our other angle, but they don't share the same base? Well, just like in parallelograms, these things are going to be supplementary. So that means that both of those angles have to add up to 180. So as long as we subtract away 140, 180 minus 140 will give us 40 degrees. Now I know what's going on with my stylus. Let me do this one more time. 180 minus 140 will give us 40 degrees. All right, and that will be our answer. Our missing angle is going to be 40 degrees. Pause the video, finish taking any notes that you need, and let's go ahead and move on to our third example. Okay, here we have example 3. It says given quadrilateral ABCD is a parallelogram. So once again, we know that it must have two sets of parallel sides. Okay? Alright, and it says angle ABC is 5x minus 10. So let's see. Here's A going to B, going to C. So know that this angle is represented by 5x minus 10. Alright, and it says angle ADC is 3x minus 2. So here's A to D to C, which would be 3x minus 2. Now we want to find the measure of angle BAD, and notice BAD is neither one of those things, it's up there. So what do we want to do? Well, the first thing we notice is that these two angles are opposite from each other, and so we want to take these two things, and if they're opposite angles from each other on a parallelogram, we know that they are congruent. And so we can go ahead and set 5x minus 10. Sorry, my stylus is being very weird. It seems like I have to kind of hold it down for a second. And that will be equal to 3x minus 2. And from here, we just have a very simple algebraic equation to solve. Remember, when we have x's on both sides, we always want to move our smaller x, so we can subtract 3x from both sides, minus 3x. And as I write this, ask yourself, what is 5x minus 3x? Well, that gives us 2x minus 10, which will of course equal negative 2. Now from there, all we have to do is get x by itself. Remember, we always get rid of our addition or subtraction first. So the opposite of minus 10 will of course be plus 10. And we'll add 10 to both sides, plus 10. And let's see, once those cancel out, we now have 2x equals, and what is negative 10 plus, what's negative 2 plus 10? Well, of course, that will give us 8. Now remember, to get rid of the 2 in front of the x, we have to divide both sides by 2. And of course, 8 divided by 2 will give us x equals 4. And once again, I do apologize for these writing issues. Okay, so now that we know x equals 4, that's great, but that really doesn't help us finish the problem. What we then have to do is take x, and we have to substitute it into either one of these angles that we know. Now I'm going to choose 3x minus 2 because 3x minus 2 has these smaller and more simple numbers. And I'm going to write 3x minus 2 as 3 parentheses minus 2. Why is that? Remember, with substitution, we're always replacing that letter x with our number. We'll use parentheses to do that. Well, from there, we know 3 times 4 will, of course, give us 12 minus 2, and 12 minus 2 would, of course, give us 10. So we now have that this angle right here is actually, in fact, 10 degrees. And that means that the opposite angle would be 10 degrees as well. But here's the problem. We don't want these angles. We actually want their consecutive angle. We want angle BAD. Well, remember, and I'll just do it right here where I have some space. Consecutive angles for parallelograms are always going to add up to 180. So if we can just do 180 minus the angle that we know, minus 10, well, of course, that will give us 170 degrees. And so our answer for angle BAD will be 170 degrees. All right, thank you all, and let's move on to example 4. Okay, and here's our last and 4th example. It says given quadrilateral ABCD is a trapezoid where AD is parallel to BC. So remember, the definition of a trapezoid is that it's going to have one and only one set of parallel sides. Now we're also given the angle ADC is 3x plus 12. So let's see, here's A to D to C, and so this will be 3x plus 12. And we're also given the angle BCD, so let's see, here's B, C to D is going to be 10x minus 5. Okay, complete that. Alright, now the question becomes, when these two angles are in these positions, remember from our second example, these are consecutive non-base angles. Do they equal each other? Are they congruent, or are they supplementary? What do you think? And yeah, they are supplementary. So remember, when two things are supplementary, that means that they simply add up to 180 degrees. So we can do 10x minus 5 plus 3x plus 12 is of course equal to 180. Now from here, on this left side, all we want to do is combine our like terms from the very start. So ask yourself, what is 10x plus 3x? Well, that would of course give us 13x. And how about negative 5 plus 12? Well, the 5 is going to take away from the 12, and so 12 minus 5 will of course give us 7. And this is equal to 180. Now from here we have a very simple equation, and ask yourself, should we get rid of the coefficient in front of x or our constant first? And of course we always get rid of our addition or subtraction first. So the opposite of plus 7 will of course be minus 7. Now at this point we have 13x is equal to 180 minus 7 will of course give us 173. Alright, now from there, and I know that this is not turning out the best, but we have 13x equals 173. And how do we get rid of that 13? Well, of course we will divide both sides by 13. And for this, I'm actually going to need my calculator. So let me grab that, and we will find out that 173 divided by 13 is, let's see, 173 divided by 13 will give us 13.31. So I'm going to round to the nearest hundredth. We have 13.31. Now from there, what's the actual question? It says find the measure of angle ADC. And we see that A to D to C, this is in fact our top angle. And so we'll take that 3x, which of course we write as 3 parentheses, plus 12. And we're going to add in that 13.31. Let's see if I can squeeze that in. 31. Okay, now from there, all we do is multiply these two things first. And I know that 3 times 13 is 39, and I know that 31 times 3 is going to be 93. So just a little quick mental math there. 3 times 13.31 will give us 39.93 plus 12. And at this point, if you need your calculator, hey, that is A-okay. Just to be safe, let's go ahead and do that number, 39.9 times, or I'm sorry, plus 12 will give us 51.93. So it turns out that our angle ADC is going to be 51.93 degrees. Don't ever forget, angles will always be in degrees. Alright, I hope this helps, and I'll see you guys in our level 4 video.